Tea is a journey through flavour and a voyage to distant lands, where we meet new people and fresh landscapes, new aromas and languages. Tea is a great unifier and drawer together of different people and tongues, diverse cultures and appetites. The tea leaf unites people, offering opportunities to displaced populations, to immigrant communities, and of course to those forging a future for their nations. Come with us as we see how tea was wrested from China to India, thanks to the exploits of a dedicated British officer. The tea growing secrets were sent abroad to India, rather like the very first silkworm smuggled out of China to feed a voracious foreign appetite for silk. And from a tea estate built by Indians themselves, we head to a perpetually busy tea stall in Calcutta and take an intriguing diversion to examine the industry that fires the pottery cups for the city's daily deluge of drinkers. Finally, we head from one of Beijing's narrow hutong to far-off Georgia and a lonely tea plantation that has gone to seed. Why did it fall apart? Who owned it? What is the connection between China and this distant plot of Georgian land? Will the tea thrive again? Well, join us and find out.
In the south of China, the color of early spring is golden. This is the color of sunshine. It is the color of rapeseed flowers. This is the season for sowing, the season for picking, the season for hope. As gold fades away, green takes its place. Spring is the time for tea. In China, Japan, India, and Kenya, from Asia to Africa, tea awakens in all the tea production countries.
I don't know any magic tricks, but I know the magic of water.
Nick is 30 years old this year. Every weekend, he sells pulled tea in Bangkok's Chatuchak market. Milk tea came from India to Malaysia. Malaysians discovered that when milk is mixed with tea, pulling it can make it more fragrant and its texture smoother. Because of Nick's amazing pulling techniques, he is known as a magician. pull tea is extremely popular in Southeast Asia. An expert tea puller there can even become an idol among young people.
When I first started doing this, I could only pull 1 cup of tea at a time. Later, I tried pulling 2 cups at the same time. When I practiced this on the roof, I would blindfold myself.
Nick sells close to 300 cups of milk tea at the Chatuchak market every day. Every cup costs 20 Thai baht, about 4 renminbi.
I like the Chatuchak market. I meet people from all over the world here, and my milk tea accompanies them throughout the market. In Bangkok, water has a life. Every river, everybody who lives by the water, every animal can sense the life in water. Water gives Bangkok life. The city is often referred to as the City of Angels. Although I'm just a tea puller, I am exploring the art of water. When water meets tea, it becomes a silk ribbon in my hands. Thais love drinking sweet and smooth tea. When the tea glides in the air, don't you think it'll taste better?
Under the influence of China, Thai people started drinking tea very early on, but they only started growing tea much later. The tea plantations in Thailand are found mostly in the north. Santikiri is one of its most famous tea-producing regions.
I came to Santikiri because of a woman. She was from Santikiri.
Lu Rui Ming is a tea master from Taiwan. In 1990, he fell in love with a woman from Santikiri while on holiday in Bangkok. Since then, he has stayed in Thailand.
I came here with her. When I arrived, the entire mountain was filled with tea plantations. In Taiwan, my hometown was like that too. So I felt this sense of closeness to this place. I started growing tea with her and we worked hard on it for 20 years.
Santikiri is located at the edge of the drug-producing Golden Triangle region. It was once controlled by an armed militia. Since the 1980s, the United Nations started encouraging the Golden Triangle region to begin producing tea instead. Tea has given the people in Santikiri a new lease on life. Lu Rui Ming brought with him the techniques of making Taiwanese oolong tea. The people here call him Brother Ming. The rainy season is late this year. Brother Ming's tea factory can't begin work.
It usually starts raining in March. It'll start raining and raining from then on. But this year we don't know what to do. The rains haven't come, and all the farmers are wondering what to do now.
Santikiri's main industries are tea and tourism. There are many ethnic minorities living here. To many Western tourists, Santikiri is the region in Thailand that most reminds them of China. Santikiri has a few thousand ethnic Chinese who are descendants of the Kuomintang soldiers. They identify as being from Yunnan. In 1949, some remnants of the Kuomintang troops originally stationed in Yunnan retreated to Burma. They couldn't return to their home country, and they were being attacked by the Burmese government, so they escaped through the tropical rainforest to Thailand. There, they became mercenaries for the Thai government. They fought on the side of the government during the Thai Civil War. In 1982, They handed over their weapons and became Thai citizens. This put an end to 30 years of strife. Now these former soldiers and their grandchildren grow tea for a living. They still practice their Chinese rituals, such as offering tea to the god of the mountain. Every year, Brother Ming joins them in their ritual.
I, Lu Ruming, came to Santa Kiri from Taiwan. Please bless me and let there be a good harvest this year. Please bless my family and bring them peace. They are Thai citizens now. They've handed over their weapons. In exchange, the Thai king gave them almost 6,000 acres of land to grow crops on.
原来为什么种茶的原因是这种样？那个时候让我们民俗了让职业没有，西贡就叫说，全民俗了一到八组，去那个就是一个这个纽约湖龙美营家边去种茶。我们每个村民啊，一家一户就砍一棵树，就去那边坐着，然后飞机来装了来行茶。 说我们是是种茶的，不做什么毒品，是种茶为业。所以说我们茶的生产营运是这样引起的，然后就这样一批就种茶来了，都是种茶的营运引起。
Taking advantage of the opportunity, the exiled Chinese started a new life here by growing tea. The climate and soil of Santa Kiri are similar to Yunnan, making it a good place to grow tea. It is now the end of March. The rains have still not come. Brother Ming puts his energy into building the factory instead. Last year, Brother Ming ended his 20-year marriage with his wife. He used to own the biggest tea factory in Santa Kiri. After his divorce, he gave all his property to his ex-wife.
I did think of going back to Taiwan, but when I thought about it some more, I've been here for almost 20 years now. I like the old soldiers here and their children. Everyone here knows who I am too. I once told them that now that I'm in Thailand, I want to make these Thai tea leaves famous throughout the world.
At the end of April, it finally rains in Santa Kiri. The picking can finally begin in Brother Ming's tea plantation. The biggest population in the Santa Kiri region is the Akha people. This hill tribe has become great assistance to the Chinese tea growers of the region. Brother Ming's tea production method comes from Taiwan. The tea is called Oriental Beauty.
The name Oriental Beauty was coined by the Queen of England. She has tasted this tea. To produce this tea, you need the help of the tea green leafhopper. It's a type of insect that's green in color. It sucks the juices of the plant. That is why we don't use pesticides or fertilizers.
In Santa Kiri, Brother Ming is famous for his tea-making techniques. People will come to him from all over the region with their tea leaves and ask him to make oolong tea out of them.
To make Oriental Beauty tea, the leaves have to be withered after they are picked. They become much heavier than other tea leaves. If the leaves are not withered, the tea wouldn't be sweet. I told him the leaves have to be this long, but he gave me leaves this long instead, and he mixed them together. I can't make Oriental Beauty tea with these leaves. This is not Oriental Beauty anymore, it's Occidental Beauty.
"20 years ago, when Brother Ming was still learning how to make Oriental Beauty tea in Taiwan, he would read about the Santikiri soldiers in the newspapers. He never would have thought that he would one day become friends with them.
The soldiers would come and ask me how much I was going to sell the tea for. They said the tea that they planted could only sell for a few dollars per kilogram. I told them that my tea in Taiwan would sell for $1,000 per kilogram. They said that's impossible. The monthly salary in Thailand is about $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Who would buy a tea that costs $1,000? I said, never mind, let's just try growing it.
Nowadays, Brother Ming hopes to make Santikiri tea famous with his Oriental Beauty tea.
When you drink Oriental Beauty, it feels like you're having a conversation with a beautiful woman. It tastes really good.
Brother Ming has found a new love. His current wife is also Thai.
The two of us will build a family together. It is like starting from zero for the both of us. I came to Santikiri when I was 32 years old. I'm 53 years old now. I've been here for 20 years. I spent my youth here. I told the soldiers when I first arrived that I wanted to turn Santikiri into Lugu. They said, what is Lugu? I replied, it's a place to buy tea with tea factories. Today, that has come true.
Thailand is just one of the new places in the world to start mass-producing tea. In the 19th century, the tea trade was very lucrative and largely dominated by China. This prompted Westerners to start developing other tea-producing regions elsewhere. The then English colony, India, became the top choice for that.
After 30, 35, 36 years, I also feel like that. Tea has gone into my blood. If you cut somewhere, I don't think blood will come out. It will be tea, maybe Darjeeling tea, which will come out.
Lo Chan is an Indian tea merchant. He has tea plantations in the mountains of Darjeeling, where the famous Darjeeling tea is produced. There, the special climate and environment feels like it was created for the cultivation of tea.
The Darjeeling district grows this Darjeeling tea, which has got its very unique aromatic flavors.
The Darjeeling black tea that made Lo Chan famous dates back to less than 200 years ago. India neighbors China to the west. Both countries have had trade ties since ancient times. The practice of drinking tea came to India very early on. But the people who really turned India into a tea-producing region were the English.
1700 or 1800, the main revenue came from tea only. So these people wanted to plant tea somewhere outside China because China was charging them very high and they want to grow their own.
30 years ago, Lo Chan started his tea business. He has always been interested in the history of tea in India. In 1824, an English officer discovered wild tea trees in Assam. This strengthened the resolve of the English to start producing tea in India. More than a decade later, the first batch of tea leaves grown in Assam was sent to London. But at the time, the quality of the Assam that was produced didn't manage to win many people over. The general consensus of the English tea drinkers was that tea produced in China was still superior.
They appointed someone to take out the planting material, like the tea seeds, tea bushes, and then once it is established, to make tea, the tea implements, and then the tea makers. And this one was Robert Fortune, and then he was here, made many trips, and We went around many areas.
More than 100 years ago, the English botanist Robert Fortune went to the Wuyi Mountains in Fujian in the hopes of bringing back the secret to making black tea. He disguised himself as a Chinese person. He even learned Chinese. After spending 3 years in the tea-producing regions of the Wuyi Mountains, he finally mastered the technique of making black tea. Fortune realized that the technique and tea plants were not enough. He managed to convince 8 experienced tea producers from the Wuyi Mountains to come with him to India. We can no longer find the names of these 8 people. These unknown tea makers spent their entire lives building the tea industry in India, but they never managed to return to their homes in China, living out their days in a foreign land. Lo Chan has traveled the tea routes from China to India many times. His favorite tea-producing region in China is Yunnan, the place where the very first tea leaves were produced.
So many varieties here. This is first time I've seen in my life a person going up the tree and plucking those. I'd never seen in my life.
Lo Chan spends a few months each year in China, searching for inspiration. He hopes to build a greater connection between the 2 largest tea-producing countries in the world.
Real old things.
When the tea industry took off in India, the English controlled most of the country's tea plantations, but they did not control the Makebari tea estate. This estate was built by the Indians there.
So I've written a poem about Makebari. I described its beauty. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Makebari. In the southern foothills of the Himalayas, there is a beautiful place. It wears a cloak of green. That is the tips of the green tea leaves. In the morning, we can't see the sunrise, but we can hear the joyous cries of the birds. Here we can see the green forests and waterfalls, which nourish the Kurseong region. This place has a beauty all its own. It attracts people from all over. Makebari, my homeland. I love you. Thank you.
The 13-year-old Pramthna idolizes the owner of the Makebari tea estate, Raja Banerjee. Banerjee's family used to be royalty in India. The locals affectionately call him Prince Banerjee.
Now you've just entered a functioning heritage. This is the first tea factory ever built, Makebari, and it wasn't built by an English one. It was built by my great-grandfather. And I must introduce you to my bloodhound. This gentleman which you see, he's about 4 foot 6 inches, but he's got a nose like a bloodhound. He smells the first one, and then on the second one, he gives the instructions where to stop it. So his name is Indre, and he's my bloodhound for this. Of course, he calls the shots, he lives in his own bubble, and nobody can touch him, tamper with him.
Although the processing of tea leaves is important in determining the quality of the tea, the most important factor is, after all, the soil in which they grow.
We apply cow dung compost, over 1,000 tons every year. And that has to be well managed, because if the compost is not well managed, then it becomes a poison or you lose nutrients either way. So it has to be just right. Most farmers farm for profit. It is only the balance sheet, most. But most farmers forget that they are also artists. Their canvas is the soil, the earth. And if you can paint a wonderfully sustainable picture there, everybody can enjoy it like an original piece.
Most Indian tea estate owners don't manage their estates personally. They mostly live in the big cities. Banerjee is an exception.
Be where she is today.
Is she the only one?
Indeed, you see now, the main focal point of an activity that binds the 7 villages into one community, which is called the Makaibari community, and unites it, is the tea.
Banerjee graduated from Cambridge University in the UK 20 years ago and returned to the Makaibari tea estate. He was the first to produce organic tea in India. He also built an ideal home here. He protects the environment and wildlife here. He built free schools, kindergartens, libraries, hospitals, and opened up the homes of the villagers to visitors to give them more income. This would have been impossible in a remote mountainous region without him. Because of this, Banerjee is the hero of many children here. In 2002, the International Economic Council gave him the highest achievement award. To Banerjee, the greatest reward is in seeing the transformation of this village. Here, nobody locks their front doors. There are no strangers here, and everybody welcomes visitors with a sincere smile. India has only been producing tea for around 200 years. But at one point, it surpassed China to become the biggest tea exporter in the world. At first, the tea leaves produced in India were almost exclusively sent to England, until one day, more tea was produced in India than was consumed in England. The English started encouraging locals to start drinking tea. Before this, the favorite drink in India was sugar and milk. Now, they have turned that favorite drink into milk tea. Today, 70% of the tea produced in India is consumed in India. There is a tea stall on almost every street corner. Like many of the traditional Indian people, Anantayami's day begins with a prayer. He runs a small tea stall in Calcutta. His customers begin coming in at the break of day, so Anantayami wakes up every single day before dawn to start selling tea on the street corner.
I wake up at 4:30 every morning and start making tea by 5 o'clock. I eat my breakfast from 9 to 9:30, and then my lunch at around 2 in the afternoon. Around 6:30 to 7:30 in the evening, I close up my stall.
Anantayami moved to Calcutta from the outskirts of the city 18 years ago. He has been making a living from his tea stall. He adds more milk to his tea than other tea stalls, drawing a bigger crowd of customers in the area because of it.
I have no big dreams. I just want to do this. It feeds my family.
Every cup of tea sells for 6 Indian rupees, which is 60 cents renminbi. After taking away his overhead costs, he makes more than 200 rupees every day.
I run this stall myself, and I don't have any help. I've been doing this for a long time now. This is how I pay my 2 children's way through school. I hope they become doctors. They're working hard at it. I hope they can do it and make their daddy proud.
Indian milk tea is best drunk from a coolar. These coolars are seldom used twice. Once the tea in it is finished, it is smashed onto the ground. From the earth it came, to the earth it returns. To the Indian people, this is the most natural thing to do. It is not a waste at all. Anantayami's coolars come from a factory 45 kilometers away, where they are made by hand. Prajapati has been making these coolars since he was a child 40 years ago.
I came from central Benares. We moved to Calcutta 60 to 70 years ago. On an average day, I make at least 100 coolars.
Making coolars is a difficult job. It requires a lot of training to master. Prajapati spends an entire day sitting down when he makes his coolars. He only finishes work late at night. Prajapati doesn't get much rest because there is always a continuous demand for his coolars.
You know, to tell the truth, I'm very happy with life. I'm happy with the way things have worked out for me. I don't think I can find a better job than this.
At the end of the 19th century, India became a major tea producer. The black tea industry in China that once dominated the world suffered a huge blow. Chinese tea was still produced by hand in those days. It could not compete with the mass-manufactured tea leaves from India. This gradually diminished the presence of Chinese black tea in the market. At this time, a new black tea from Ximen in Anhui province started to appear. This tea became known as Kimun tea. Its mysterious aroma won it a place in the high-grade black teas of the world. Today, Kimun tea is still one of the leading black teas. Xie Yongzhong has worked in a tea factory for most of his life. Every tea season, he makes a small batch of handmade tea for himself.
We would go with our grandmother and mother to the mountains to pick tea leaves when we were young. When I graduated from school, I joined a tea factory and started making tea.
Kimun tea was first produced in the second half of the 18th century. In the early 20th century, it was one of the 3 top black teas in the world, along with India's Darjeeling tea and Sri Lanka's Ceylon tea. Westerners loved Kimun tea for its aroma. They even coined a term for it, the Kimun aroma. Rainy days aren't good for making tea. But Xie Yongzhong can't bear to let the leaves he picked this morning go to waste.
The leaves have to be processed the day they're picked. They can't be left overnight. They lose their freshness over time. Tea leaves are very important to us in Ximen. We never let them go to waste.
It takes half a day for fresh leaves to wither. On wet days like this, it can take even longer. After the leaves are withered, they need to be massaged. Some people joke that when Xie Yongzhong washes his hands, a good deal of tea comes out. The young leaves break under the repeated massaging. Xie Yongzhong has done this for so long that the green juice from the leaves have rubbed into the lines of his palms. After this is done, the leaves are placed on a bamboo basket. The green and red tea leaves oxidize in a few hours. They are then dried over a charcoal fire. This is when the Kimun aroma coalesces. For the tea that Xie Yongzhong drinks himself, a day's work of rough processing will suffice. But in the factory, this tea needs to be further refined. The refinement process takes place in 17 steps. Then the leaves are placed in a sack and smashed. The leaves are sifted again using sieves of different sizes to separate them according to thickness and length. Xie Yongzhong believes that only by separating leaves of the same size can one make a more delicious tea. The intricate Kimun tea was originally made for export. Even the tea masters at the factory couldn't afford to drink the tea that they made themselves.
We don't drink the tea that we make. We cannot do that. Our tea is more expensive and takes a lot of effort to make. It needs to be exported to satisfy the demand for it. If everyone here starts drinking it, we'll finish everything in no time.
At the end of the 19th century, Kimun tea conquered the taste buds of the Europeans. Amidst fierce competition from other tea-producing regions, the Chinese tea masters managed to maintain their hold on the tea market. A hutong in Beijing's Xidan district is about to be demolished. Liu Qi grew up in this hutong. He is now 70 years old. This small courtyard houses the memories of many generations. The Liu family is an international family. It has Chinese blood, Russian blood, and Georgian blood. The language of communication between the family is Russian. Before their house is demolished, Liu Qi takes out a few old photographs. The family's mixed heritage came from his great-grandfather, Liu Junzhou.
I think it was around 1893. A Russian merchant named Popov invited my great-grandfather over to Georgia to start cultivating tea there. So my great-grandfather took some tea producers, tea seeds, and some tea buds with him. At that time, Georgia was still under the Russian Empire.
Before Liu Junzhou went there, Russia had already tried cultivating tea many times, but they had always failed. Liu Junzhou arrived in Georgia in 1893. He later became the head of the Russian royal tea estate. He was even conferred a medal by the Tsar, making him the only foreigner to receive this honor in the history of the Russian Empire. Liu Qi has always been interested in his great-grandfather's story. He started doing business in Georgia when he was young. After his retirement, he went to Georgia many times to find out more about his great-grandfather and his family history. Georgia is located in the Caucasus region of Eurasia. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Georgia became an independent country. Before the Soviet Union, it used to be part of the Russian Empire. Very few people know that this was once an important tea-producing region. 80% of the tea consumed in the Soviet Union came from Georgia. The Russian people have long had an affinity for tea. The tea road passing through Siberia from China to Russia spanned thousands of kilometers. Since the second half of the 18th century, it was one of the most vibrant trade routes in the world. Because of the long journey to reach Russia, tea became a prized commodity there. Transplanting tea to a more accessible region was always a dream for the Russians. Georgia borders the Black Sea and has a climate similar to China. Naturally, it became the first choice for tea cultivation. Batumi is an important port in the Black Sea. It was here that Liu Junzhou disembarked.
It was here that he came on land. At that time, it would have taken him more than 3 months to get here. They would have had to stop at every port to refuel and replenish their water. They used steamships in the past. It must have been a really difficult journey for him.
Liu Junzhou's tea plantation used to only be 30 kilometers away from the port. One has to look really hard now to see that this used to be a tea plantation.
It is abandoned now. Nobody is looking after it. The tea plants are all ruined. What a waste.
But Liu Qi didn't come on this trip to reminisce. When the Soviet Union dissolved, Georgia's tea production went into decline. Back then, Liu Junzhou's tea used to be known as Liu tea. The Georgian government approached Liu Qi to rejuvenate its tea industry. But the technique has now long been lost. In order for Liu Qi to find some clues, he will need somebody's help.
Bailong is my friend. He has always been interested in Chinese culture. He even practices Chinese martial arts. He fell in love with this tea, but he couldn't find it anywhere. So he would come to China. He would always go to Malian Road in Beijing. Later, he set up a Chinese tea house in Georgia, serving all kinds of Chinese tea. The tea that he makes is very fragrant and strong. I asked him, what did Liu tea taste like? He said he doesn't know either. So many years have passed. Very few people remember the taste of Liu tea now, so I told him to take me to a tea producer who could answer my questions.
Bailong's tea comes from a tea master named Datuo. Datuo used to be the head of agriculture in the Autonomous Republic of Majara. He later quit and went home, dedicating himself to producing tea.
Datuo is very particular about his tea. The flowers on his table come from his garden. He would go to the backyard to pick some wild fruits, like wild berries, cherries, and other berries. He plants them all himself. Georgians love black tea. They make a thick, concentrated version of it first. Then they add water to dilute it. They drink it with honey or sugar. They like it sweet. Datuo makes tea the old-fashioned way. He lets the tea leaves wither naturally, massages them, lets them oxidize, and dries them. The methods of making black tea are pretty much the same everywhere. But Liu tea might have its own peculiarities. They are trying to find out more about its methods, too. Georgian tea has become very different from Chinese tea now.
Unfortunately, Datuo didn't manage to solve the mystery of Liu tea. Liu Qi has been in Georgia for a while now. He hopes to find an answer before the end of the summer. This way, he'll still have time to hire helpers from back home before spring next year, when he hopes to begin planting the first crops in his great-grandfather's plantation. Today, he receives news that someone in the very first tea factory in Georgia might know something about Liu tea. This was once Georgia's biggest tea factory. Its manufacturing methods were passed down from Liu Junzhou's era.
He has been working here for 42 years. He's a tea worker.
So can you tell me which kind of tea he makes? Black tea? Is there any sample?
This tea leaf expert told me that Liu tea's techniques were the same as those used to make Kimun tea. The tea seeds that Liu Junzhou brought were from the south of China. The processing methods used in Georgia now are modified from those that were used to make Liu tea.
Liu Qi is unable to verify how true this statement is. But he finally has a clue to the manufacturing methods of Liu tea. He decides to investigate further when he returns to China. No matter what, he needs to rebuild his great-grandfather's tea plantation using his own methods.
My great-grandfather worked in Georgia for over 30 years. He spent the best years of his life there. Many tea producers who came with him stayed behind. I have a dream. I want to bring Liu tea back into existence.
Individuals can find their lives entwined with tea. Whether it's a man selling pulled tea in a market in Bangkok, displaying his dizzying skills to passers-by, or lives centered on tea as people forge a new life abroad. Or those who explore their family history through the prism of a glass of tea. But which nation drinks more tea than anybody else, despite never traditionally growing this stuff? And how did its steamy love affair with the tea leaf start? Find out next time.